Hey guys, what is going on? So today I wanted to talk about the brand new Gorilla Mode Nitric formula. This is an upgrade from the previous Nitric, which has not had an upgrade since it launched, and it has continued to be probably the best pump product on the market. But after the standard Gorilla Mode got upgraded, and that was a very substantial improvement, obviously Nitric has been waiting for an upgrade, and there really wasn't much to do in terms of improving that product. But I'm actually really surprised in terms of the outcome, in terms of actually experiencing the differences between pumps that you're getting from this product, the differences in texture, grittiness, everything like that. And I actually am really impressed with what they've done considering the differences in the label. I really wasn't expecting as much as what I actually got out of it. So I want to talk about the main differences in terms of the label, and then talk about what that actually means from a practical standpoint of day-to-day usage and stuff like that. So in terms of just the main difference you're going to notice right away is the difference in tub size. So this is about 15 to 20% more product. In terms of this scoop size, it's about 17 grams, and this one is a little over 20. So you're getting an extra 3 grams of ingredients in this, which, obviously it's much more important what the actual ingredients are, but that extra ingredient profile that you're getting, usually you're used to inflation giving you less of something over time, and we're actually experiencing the opposite of this, giving you additional 15 to 20% of product. So that's good to see for once. But what is actually changing with this formula, both in terms of on label, but also in terms of how is that going to affect your workout? What are you actually going to notice? So the biggest difference, in my opinion, and this is the really heavy hitting ingredient that I really miss when I don't take standard nitric over, regular Gorilla Mode, is the VasoDrive AP. So this was doubled in terms of the dosage. And so this is taking it from 254 milligrams to 508. And that is obviously a small percentage of the overall formula size increase, but I think that is the heaviest hitting ingredient. And so for me, the difference between standard nitric and this, I think that's probably the thing that I would really pin on being the big driver of improvement in terms of pumps. So VasoDrive AP is basically helping you inhibit something, a enzyme in the body that is going to inhibit the blood flow that you're getting from your blood vessels. And so having all of these pump products, having the citrulline, having, all these different nitrates and sodium and the glycerol and everything like that, these are going to help to enhance the pump. But if you have that enzyme that is constricting your blood vessels, then that could potentially be the bottleneck in terms of you getting a better pump or not. And so depending on where you are in that spectrum, maybe you're somebody who just needs a little bit of L-citrulline and you're getting a really good pump. If you're somebody like myself, pump products don't seem to have the same benefits. But what I have noticed is that I think I'm a prime candidate for somebody to have that VasoDrive AP help me dramatically. And so this is obviously for the maxed out dose. You're getting the full 508 grams. However, if you were somebody who had potentially a pretty good effect on just one scoop of standard nitric in the past, from the perspective of the L-citrulline and everything like that, and you never really ventured into taking 2 scoops, well, if you're getting twice the VasoDrive AP and therefore you're getting the same dose from just 1 scoop in terms of the VasoDrive AP from the old formula, you could potentially see that inhibition of that enzyme be a dramatic difference. If you're somebody who only needs, maybe the 5 grams of citrulline and, a couple grams of the glycerol, well, that's going to be a very good potent formula for you at just 1 scoop. Whereas somebody like myself sees a max benefit from that 2 scoop dosage. That's going to be a very big, difference in terms of actually being able to get a lot more pump out of less money. And I think that's going to be a big difference for a lot of people. Now, if you're somebody like myself, again, who wants to take that maxed out dose, really had good benefit from getting that VasoDrive AP at the lower dosage, you're really getting that enzyme inhibited to a greater degree, or again, you're able to decrease the dosage. So I think that's probably the heaviest hitting increase in terms of the pump. A lot of the other things are remaining the same, but one difference in terms of, quality of life difference is that we're changing the glycerol from the old Glycer pump, which anybody who's used an older pre-workout who hasn't had, the difference in a newer product, which is HydroPrime, well, the grittiness that people often associate with pre-workouts is often due to that glycer pump being added. And this is something that you get when you're, shaking up a new bottle. But if it's something that you opened up maybe a month or two ago and it's been sitting there, that's really when you notice that extra, grittiness, and it kind of hardens. And it's really annoying, and it makes the consistency of the pre-workout a lot worse. So switching from the glycer pump to the HydroPrime is primarily just a quality of life thing. I do think that in my experience, HydroPrime has improved my pumps a little bit, but I also just add HydroPrime as a separate ingredient. And so I've been doing that ever since they released it. And so that's not really something that I'm too worried about. Before, I used to take the standard Glycerol, which was extremely gritty, and I just kind of accepted my fate as like, hey, I'm taking this glycer pump formula. I'm adding in the extra gritty Glycerol on top of that. And that's just something that I got used to. So for me, the grittiness, I honestly don't really care all that much. It's more so like when I'm scooping it out of the pre-workouts, it's been something that's been sitting for a while. That I think is something that is potentially, if you have a whole bunch of different flavors, that's going to be a quality of life improvement thing. But overall, you're still getting the same amount of when you compare the Glycerol to the HydroPrime. So, in terms of the overall pump improvement on that, that's probably not going to be something that's going to be as big of a game changer, but again, just improving the texture in that area. Also, in terms of the flavor profile, they have improved their flavor system, and so obviously, depending on which pre-workout you're getting, everything is subjective in terms of flavoring, in terms of which flavor you prefer, but also the way that they flavor the product. So I'm not going to say that that's better or worse, but that is obviously something they spent a lot of time on in terms of getting the flavors more spot on. And the sour gummy worm, this is what I've been taking like every single day. I really, really like this. So I actually just bought a cherry blackout nitric that's probably going to be coming this week at some point. And so pretty excited for that one. I really like this sour gummy worms, but obviously you're not always in the mood for sour any given day. So I can report back on the cherry blackout. But in my experience, this is a very good flavor. I really, really like this one. I'm just not always in the mood for it because obviously you're not always in the mood for sour. And this is pretty sour. So obviously flavor, quality of life in terms of changing from glycer pump to HydroPrime, the VasoDrive AP. Otherwise, there is one other kind of major difference that I would say, and that is the sodium nitrate. So they added sodium nitrate, which is a branded version of it, which is NO3T, and you're getting 1,500 milligrams of that. Now, I can't pinpoint exactly if that is a game-changing thing, because I would just say overall, I have noticed a substantially better pump from this new formula. But I would venture to say, considering my experience with VasoDrive AP, I would say that's probably the thing that I'm getting the most benefit out of. But other than that, the main thing that you're really getting out of this in terms of that extra room that they're getting from that pre-workout in terms of adding the additional 3 grams of ingredients, you are getting 3 grams of taurine in this. And if you're not familiar with taurine, tons of benefits. Taurine is something I would recommend whether you take this or you take standard Gorilla Mode. I would recommend supplementing with taurine on top. Very good, in terms of just many different things in the body. And I can't list them all. I would recommend just doing your own research in terms of what taurine does. But there are a ton of benefits. And taurine is something I think you should always be supplementing with year round. It's a very good thing. It's pretty cheap. So getting it in a convenient dose here is obviously nice to have. It is beneficial to have in a pre-workout for sure, but it's not something that I would just say, okay, I'm only getting it on the days that I'm taking nitric and no other days. I would recommend definitely getting taurine on top of that to make sure that you're getting the max benefit from that. Other than that, there was one thing that they brought down, and that is the agmatine sulfate. So agmatine sulfate is a good pump product. That being said, it tastes horrible, and it is known to cause some stomach discomfort. And so they just brought down the dosage a little bit. They brought it from 1,500 to 1,000. And I would say that's a very good way of, changing this formula, just because agmatine sulfate, I think, by itself is a good pump product. But when we're talking about everything else that's included in this, and it's maxed out on so many vectors, I don't think they need that additional 500 milligrams to be beneficial from a pump perspective. I just think it's, again, already so maxed out in so many vectors that it's probably fine. And again, the taste of it, the taste is improved. And I think the flavor profile that we're getting out of the new Nitric, some of that is due to the improvement in terms of the, the system for the flavoring. But I think also it's just cutting down on that agmatine sulfate, because my God, if you've ever taken standard agmatine sulfate by itself, which I used to do, it tastes absolutely horrible. As far as the stomach discomfort, that's not something that I personally noticed back when I used to take it by myself or by itself. But that was years ago, and my stomach is not quite as resilient as it used to be. And speaking of that, they did change the creatine from standard creatine, at least that's what they had listed on the label, to micronized. Now, I've always found that the creatine that they put in these doesn't upset my stomach, but that is something that I've found as I've gotten older, is if I used to be able to take like tons of cheaper creatine and my stomach would be fine. Now I need that higher quality micronized creatine. Maybe that's not something that is, very beneficial for you and you're just opting for the cheapest creatine possible. But for me, if I want to hit my 15 grams of creatine, I cannot take cheap creatine. It's just not something that works out for me at my current age. Now, again, when I was like much younger, then I could take as much of the horrible creatine as I wanted. My stomach was pretty resilient. So who knows what that's all about in terms of all these artificial sweeteners that we're constantly putting in our body. I think that has something to do with it in terms of your gut microbiome. There are definitely things that you can do to improve that, but just historically, I've noticed that people, as they get older, their gut and their stomach become less resilient to eating and consuming whatever they want. So that's just something to keep in mind. But micronized creatine, in my experience, has been a little bit more tolerable. And for whatever reason, even in the older formulas, I've noticed that taking my creatine via Gorilla Mode has never upset my stomach. It's when I'm going above and beyond. And I think that may just be a dose dependent thing more so than it is the quality in that perspective. But if I am taking a higher quality creatine on top of Gorilla Mode, then I do notice that difference in terms of the quality. So that's another thing. But overall, not as many differences between this Nitric and the old one and the jump that the Gorilla Mode formula had. I would say Gorilla Mode took the standard Gorilla Mode and brought it to a whole nother level. This is more so just like an update, a much needed update in terms of, obviously, things have progressed over the last like 5 years or so. And so Nitric did need a, improvement just to kind of keep pace with the standard Gorilla Mode. But we're at the point where we've kind of just maxed out every vector when it comes to, the pump. And at this point, you're just kind of choosing between, hey, do you want stimulant or non-stimulant? I think it's really that simple. We have maxed out stimulants in terms of doing the Gorilla Mode Lightning. If you really want to go that route, that's not personally something that I like to take. I'm more of a standard Gorilla Mode guy, and I think that's a really well-rounded pre. But if you don't want the stimulants, you're just getting every vector of pump maxed out. You're getting the glycerol, you're getting everything you could possibly want. I think this is such a good formula, and I can't really imagine them doing anything more at this point. This might be the last Nitric that they ever make, because again, you just can't really improve upon what they've already done. And they really just did everything 10 out of 10 on this one, just because the last Nitric was already so maxed out as it was. They're just making it a little bit better. And again, I think the VasoDrive AP is probably the heaviest hitting addition for this new Nitric formula. So anyway, that's all I got to say about that. I will keep you updated, and I'll talk to you soon.